Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mike. You guys are rocking with me on Mike's Intellectual Corner. On today's episode, we are going to be diving into a RT documentary. This is for Russia. This is the story of Black Americans who fled to the USSR to escape race discrimination. Without further ado, we're just going to get right into it. Let's go.
What started my interest, I should say, in Black Americans in the Soviet Union in the 30s was finding this portrait. Even though I'd gone to grad school, I have a master's degree in Russian literature, I speak Russian, and I had lived over there in the late 80s, finding this portrait was a stunning development for me. How did I not know about this? I didn't know that this was a phenomenon, that there were many African Americans who went to Russia in the 30s.
And if I'm not mistaken, too, a lot of them just went over there for like contract jobs for opportunities that they just weren't afforded over here in the United States. And it was supposed to be, for the most part, if I'm not mistaken, temporary, but
In the 1920s and 30s, several hundred African Americans moved to the Soviet Union, and many of their descendants still live in Russia.
Yeah, see, that had to be the scariest thing too for these, African Americans to go over there. Really, I'm just gonna say it, for these, Americans to go over there, because think about it, like, I'm sure on over the radio and stuff like that, they're just hearing all this propaganda about, communism, how it's bad and all this other stuff. But it's so bad over here in the United States that they're just like, you know what, I'm going to give it a chance, I'm going to give it a shot. And they go and they end up loving it. So, kind of crazy thing about that.
У меня нет русской крови, но на ваш простой вопрос, как я себя чувствую, ни секунды не сомневаюсь, отвечаю вам, да, конечно же, русская.
The Russians that I meet here, at first they're like, okay, you're a foreigner, but when I speak Russian, and then they're like, wait, ты наша, ты русская.
Back home, Black Americans suffered from racism and a complete lack of prospects.
Отец однажды из окна посмотрел на белую женщину, а в то время нельзя было смотреть на белых женщин, и он боялся, что он попадет в суд линча.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm sure a lot of them would have liked that opportunity to go to, just experience another country, if anything. But, obviously, Russia was a little bit ahead of the times when it came to things like this. But,
So they decided to leave everything behind and start a new life in a country about which they knew almost nothing at all.
Some of the African Americans who went to the Soviet Union in the 1930s found great success.
Благодаря этому фильму я получил колоссальную известность.
Какая у вас машина? Мы заметили, какая красивая машина, на которой вы приехали.
Егор.
And now, almost 100 years later, a history is repeating itself.
My great-grandfather, George Tynes, went to Russia on probably the worst times to go anywhere.
Yeah, he really went into during a kind of a bad time. This is only a few years after the revolution just finished, you know what I'm saying? So it was probably not the best time to go, but obviously it was still a good time to go for him. So
Why not me? What if I come here?
Мою бабушку звали Берта Александровна Бялик, а дедушку Оливер Голден. Дедушка был афроамериканец, сыном раба. По тем временам решение моей бабушки выйти замуж или связать свою судьбу с дедушкой, белой девушки с черным американцем, было неслыханным. И мои бабушка с дедушкой думали, что у них просто нету будущего как совместная пара в Америке.
Mixed race couples were such an issue in the United States, I think, primarily because of the Jim Crow laws, of that intense hatred of African Americans. So this notion that you could mix was absolutely, impossible for many whites to accept.
Honestly, just that whole thought process back then, I don't know, I don't understand why a whole bunch of people had it. I understand because obviously certain reasons why, certain 500 years of reasons why, but still it's a very ignorant way to think when we're trying to get to an age of surpassing the space age and all that stuff. It's just it's such a Stone Age way to think,
That it was illegal in many states.
Почему мои бабушка и дедушка выбрали Советский Союз? Во-первых, потому что они были очарованы идеями коммунизма и социализма. Во-вторых, конечно же, мысль о том, что они будут жить в стране, где нету расизма, была очень привлекательна.
Since this is a new country being shaped, since it has a constitution that actually says that they're opposed to racial and gender and all different kinds of discrimination.
Yeah, and I'm sure a whole bunch of people were going to help out too, because you got to think this is a newly formed country. It's a huge country at that, so obviously they have a whole bunch of people in there, but it's a gigantic country, so they need all the help they can get. I'm sure they can. Not to mention they just went through World War I and the Civil War, so they're down on men power because so many people just died. So I'm sure they're just getting as many people as they can, essentially.
My grandfather, George Tynes, is from Smithfield, Virginia, and he ended up in Russia in the most peculiar way. He was able to land an amazing contract with the Ministry of Agriculture in Russia, and he pretty much got on a boat and ended up in the Soviet Union in the 1930s.
It's important to remember that this was the period of the Great Depression, and it was also a period in which the Soviet government was doing massive recruitment, people with technical skills.
Yeah, so I'm sure unless they actually paid for them to come over there, a lot of them is kind of I'm sure kind of a dream to be able to do something like this. So the people who I'm sure were able to, is like a godsend to it for them, to be able to get out of a depressing situation and in a depressing kind of country for them, I'm saying, why not? So
he graduated university as an agriculturist. There's no career moves, there's no jobs, and there's so much discrimination. What are you supposed to do? He went to a country where he had no clue what was going on. You watch Russia on the news, Soviet Union, communism. Why would you want to go there? George Tynes had a dream, and he found a solution, and he made history.
I would like to know, how many black people actually exactly went over there for that, because that would be pretty interesting to know, you know what I'm saying? Because it's kind of like a small migration if you think about it, so most of them stayed,
Some of the African Americans who went to the Soviet Union in the 1930s found great success. You look at Lloyd Patterson and his son, James Patterson. James Patterson became...
Yeah, and this is that one film that I was talking about, and I think I can't remember what video I was talking about, but it was one of my earlier videos, and it was pretty much a famous video. It's kind of propagandish, but it's about how this German mother and her little black son gets ran out of Germany, and they find refuge in Russia, and they take care of them and sing them lullabies and all that stuff. It's beautiful, but at the same time it is very propagandish, but
Patterson became a national icon as a baby in the famous film Circus.
The movie Circus has an extraordinary story behind it. I think it was said to be Stalin's favorite. As we see in the opening scene, there's a woman running from an angry crowd, threatening her and throwing rocks at her, and you realize that the bundle she's been carrying is her black child. This German impresario who, at the climax of the film, reveals the truth to the audience in the circus that she has a black child. And of course, the Soviet response is, so, what do we care? We don't care if he's purple or polka dotted. And then little Jimmy is passed to various members of the audience who each sing him a lullaby in one of the languages of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, so, you know, as a black person in America, in 1936 America, watching, you know, being able to catch a glimpse of this somehow, some way, yeah, I'm sure it can be very enticing to be like, you know what, I am going to the USSR.
I mean, it couldn't be more saccharine and more propagandistic, but it hit all the right nerves at the time. It was incredibly popular. Even the song was "Shiraka strana moya rodnaya," was even a sort of a de facto anthem of the Soviet Union.
And in all fairness, that should be it anyway, because, I mean, Russia is a very, I feel like, kind of, not very, but they are kind of multinational with the fact that they have, you know, conquered so much out into the Asian mainland and stuff like that, so, and into the Caucasus Mountains and all that stuff, so.
It's definitely fair to say that the Soviet Union was a prominent leader in anti-racism at the government level.
Это значит, что в нашей стране любят всех ребятей. Рожайтесь себе на здоровье, сколько хотите. Черненьких, беленьких, красненьких, хоть голубых, хоть розовеньких полосочек.
That little black boy from the circus movie is now 87. He was born and raised in the Soviet Union. He served in the Navy as a submariner. Then he became an author. He wrote short stories. In the early 1990s, after the Soviet Union collapsed, Jim Patterson moved to the USA, to his father, Lloyd Patterson's homeland, to translate his work into English. He now lives alone in a social apartment in Washington.
Этот фильм сделал меня. Благодаря этому фильму я получил колоссальную известность. Сталин знал меня, потому что он любил этот фильм «Цирк». И когда мы шагали перед трибуной, то Сталин узнал меня в ряду.
And see, and that's pretty cool too, because obviously if he was in America, he wouldn't be able to serve with white troops along with him, which is crazy to think about, but only a few years later. But.
Все ребята белые были, а я был немножко такой смуглый.
Jim's father, Lloyd Patterson, like many other African Americans, moved to the USSR to work on a contract basis. But he loved the country so much, he stayed and started a family here.
He traveled in circles in the Soviet Union, in Moscow, that he would not have in the United States. He had a wife, 3 sons, career, he was busy all the time. His wife was Vera Aralova. She was a fairly well-known designer, stage designer.
Yeah, and him having that type of life in 1930s in America, that would never have happened. So I mean, even that, having that type of life with that type of a notable wife and all that stuff would be like enough for any person to be like, you know what, I'm out. I know it's communism, but you know what I'm saying?
What he saw At that time, in 1932, in Stalin's Moscow, however strange it might sound now, he saw lots of opportunity there.
Рос. Один из американцев, который приехал с отцом.
Мой отец, Роберт Гарри Росс Джонсон, приехал сюда в 1932 году как политэмигрант Америки. Он снимался очень много в фильмах. На Мосфильме, на студии Горького, Ялтинская киностудия.
Откуда родом?
Из Кентукки, сэр.
Как зовут?
Том, сэр.
А на какой работе был?
Управляющим у мистера Шелби.
А в Америке он мог сниматься и быть актером в то время?
В то время, думаю, нет.
Yeah, he could. I mean, he could have been in TV and stuff in America, but it definitely wouldn't have been any notable roles or anything. It definitely wouldn't have been a leading role or anything like that. Definitely. So, most likely, you know, if we're just being honest with each other, it would most likely have been like a butler role or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Сомневаюсь. Он родился в город Оберн. Это штат Алабама. Этот штат был очень расистский.
Inessa Ross, the daughter of Soviet actor Robert Ross, was born and raised in Russia and now lives with her son James near Moscow in a big country house. James was a talented athlete as a boy. In the late 1980s, he played for the reserve team of one of the country's leading football clubs, Spartak Moscow.
Когда они были как-то в Днепропетровске, Бестков выпустил его в основу. И когда он вышел, разразился гром аплодисментов.
See, and that's pretty cool too, because you know, I know, you know, there's a few different clubs in there's a few football clubs in Europe that have kind of a problem with, you know, kind of like their racist taunts and stuff towards their black football players, but yeah, so that's actually pretty cool.
Он был первый темнокожий мальчик в советском футболе.
So did racism exist in the Soviet Union?
Все понимали, что в моем районе говорить мне обидные слова про мой цвет кожи очень опасно.
What happened after the Iron Curtain fell, when the descendants of those African Americans could return to America, their ancestral homeland?
Я там не понял, собственно, а что я там вот так вот сразу буду делать.
And why now, 100 years later, is Russia again attracting African Americans?
I love Pushkin. И дом, и носик кот ученый, ходят по цепи кругом. Тет направо песни заводит, едут сказки.
I mean, if there is, you know what I'm saying, as accepting as of somebody who can learn their language or, you know, obviously learn it and speak it as proficient as their first language, then, I mean, why not? You know what I'm saying?
Говорит.
Why not? Why not?
Меня часто спрашивают, сталкивался ли я с расизмом в Советском Союзе. Да, конечно, сталкивалась.
In modern Russia, it would be hard to find anyone who hasn't heard of Yelena Khanga. She's worked on television since the late 1980s, hosting several popular talk shows, including Russia's first TV show to discuss sex.
Добрый вечер, господа. Большое спасибо, что вы пришли на наше ток-шоу. Первое в России телешоу о любви и сексе.
Меня обзывали из-за цвета кожи. Меня обзывали, потому что я была не похожа на других. Когда я была маленькая, меня часто спрашивали, а что ты черная, дети? И я говорила, ну, потому что у меня папа из Африки. Они говорят, ну, подожди, но ты-то родилась в Москве, тут холодно зимой, ты же должна быть белая уже к этому времени.
Мы были просто как уникальные, необычные. Там никого не было, кроме нас, темнокожих.
Amelia Tynes' father, George Tynes, moved to the Soviet Union in the 1930s, along with many other African Americans, and settled in the Uzbek Soviet Republic, where he helped develop cattle breeding on collective farms.
And honestly, if you think about it too, them coming over like that, they're kind of lucky too, because you know, like early USSR was like super like they didn't trust nobody, you know what I'm saying? Like, so for them to be able to come to the USSR and them not be thinking that they're spies or anything was pretty cool in itself if you think about it. But yeah.
That's where Emilia spent her early childhood.
Самое сложное это было детство. Нас называли негр постоянно. Мне очень не нравилось это, ну что делать. Но когда мы переехали в Москву в 1954 году, там, конечно, уже легче было намного, потому что там были и армяне, и узбеки, и разных национальностей дети.
Но нужно видеть разницу между расизмом в Америке и расизмом в Советском Союзе. Если в Америке это был государственный расизм, который был частью государственной системы, то в Советском Союзе это был бытовой расизм. Ни дедушка Оливер Голден, ни моя мама, когда росли в Ташкенте, они не сталкивались ни с какими проявлениями расизма. У них были проблемы, потому что они были американцами.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying though. Just for the fact that the Soviets, like, they knew that they were Americans and they knew that they couldn't, like, just for the fact that they were Americans, you can't join the Soviet or the Communist Party. That alone makes it a little bit lucky because, we hear different stories about people getting sent to the gulag for like things, like little things, like, you know what I'm saying, going against the party and stuff. So for them to be left alone and stuff is pretty cool.
Во-первых, ни дедушку, ни бабушку не приняли в Компартии Советского Союза. И это обижало.
They knew that there was racism throughout Europe. But if they went to London or Paris, they could stay in the very best hotels. Well, that's not what they experienced in America.
Daily life for an African American in the 30s was frustrating. There would be parts of town that you would not be able to go to, or you would only be allowed to go to certain stores.
If there were accommodations for black, there would be separate toilets, for example, for whites. There would be separate water fountains for black, and they would usually be lower quality.
I've thought about this many times. I don't know why more African Americans didn't try to go to various other places. Maybe it just didn't occur to them.
Well, and I'm sure it did occur to them, but you have to understand the lack of money for one, because I mean, come on now, we already know how 20th century America was for black people. We barely had any money whatsoever to live, let alone to travel, you know what I'm saying? So, or to get up and move our entire family somewhere. And the fact that, two, obviously you didn't want to just leave your entire family. You had, your brothers, sisters, mom, dad, and all that stuff. And three, you had the fear of the unknown. You don't know what's going on. Obviously, you hear things, positive things, but at the same time, you hear a lot of negative things, especially about communist Russia. You just don't know. So you can't blame them,
Каково мне было в России с нетипичной фамилией и нетипичной внешностью? Ну, были некоторые особенности. Я не могу сказать, что вот так, чтобы это как-то повлияло на мою жизнь. Меня там, условно, куда-то не взяли из-за этого, или там что-то мне не дали делать, или как-то меня от чего-то отстранили.
See, he looks like he could probably pass for like maybe Armenian or Uzbekian or North African, maybe, not even American roots.
When the Soviet Union collapsed, the descendants of those African Americans had the chance to travel and to see their ancestral homeland for the first time. George Tynes' grandson, Georgi Tynes, was one of the few who went to the US in the early 1990s.
Мое впечатление было такое, вот первое впечатление, да, человека, прилетевшего из Советского Союза, что там как-то все само собой разумно организовано. Дороги хорошие, медицина доступна, еда в магазинах есть. Можно там ночью пойти купить пиво, что для меня там в Советском Союзе было нереально вообще. То, что там такое количество темнокожих, да, это было неожиданно. Я увидел, что много черных людей ездят на дорогих машинах. Я увидел о том, что черная молодежь, так скажем, себя ведет довольно-таки разнузданно, так же, как у нас тут ведет шпана. Почувствовал ли я какой-то вот возврат на историческую родину? Да, что-то такое вот было мимолетное. Какой-то трепет был, да, что вот эта вот земля, откуда вот родом мой дед.
Но вы там не остались жить?
Я там не остался жить по ряду причин. Я там не понял, собственно, что я там вот так вот сразу буду делать. и чего ради вот мне сейчас вот идти и работать в Макдональдсе, получив только что высшее образование. Все-таки.
Yeah, and you can tell too from a couple of his pictures too that yeah, he was happy to be, visiting his family and stuff like that in America, but you can tell that his heart and his friends and stuff like that and his family that he really loves and cares about are back in Russia. So.
Я вырос в России, и я общался с людьми, которые говорят по-русски, которые читают там русские книги Достоевского. В Америке у них акценты как-то смещены больше на какой-то, вот я не знаю, бизнес, практицизм какой-то. Они интересные по-своему, но они другие. И я почувствовал, что мне все-таки дорого то общение, которое я имею в России, и я вернулся сюда.
Unlike Georgi Tynes, his aunt, Emilia Tynes, moved to the USA and became an American citizen. She's lived there for the last 10 years.
Дело в том, что здесь очень удобная, как люди здесь говорят, очень удобная жизнь, а сердцем, конечно, я в России. Афроамериканскую культуру я не очень понимаю, а русская культура мне очень близка.
And I mean, that kind of comes with certain things. Like, you can't just move to a certain place and automatically understand their culture, you know what I'm saying? You have to actually do a little research on it. Obviously, her not knowing what our African Americans went through in America with slavery, 100 years of Jim Crow and all that other stuff, obviously, she's not going to understand why our culture, obviously developed and evolved the way that it did. That's all.
Последние годы, вот я слышу и вижу, конечно, по телевидению, что вот эти все убийства афроамериканцев, афроамериканцы, которые рождаются Гарлеме, уже в самой бедной семье, конечно, вылезти им из одного уровня в другое, это практически невозможно. Потому что образование...
Мы здесь получили образование в Советском Союзе, причем нам бесплатно дали такую возможность. Сначала я учился в Московском институте управления, затем я закончил MBA в Российской академии народного хозяйства.
2 высших образования.
Ну, фактически, да. Вы сейчас находитесь в офисе компании, в которой я являюсь одним из акционеров, и в то же время я...
Yeah, see, and it was good that he was able to go back because, I mean, like he was saying, here in America with that type of degree, unless you know people, sometimes it won't get you where you want. And, it is as it is sometimes it matters who you know and not what you know. And like you said, he was able to go back to Russia and that didn't matter and he was able to rise up. Yeah.
Я являюсь президентом этой самой компании. Да. У нас средний бизнес, то есть это с миллиардным оборотом компания.
Миллиард рублей?
Да, миллиард рублей, да.
Какая у вас машина? Мы заметили, какая-то красивая машина, на которой вы приехали.
Ягуар. У меня в Москве сейчас есть племянница Франсина. Интересно, она чем? Она родилась в Москве, уехала со своей мамой в Соединенные Штаты, там прожила практически всю свою сознательную жизнь. И вот сейчас она решила вернуться в Россию.
Why did I make up my mind to move to Russia? I wanted to leave a country where I was facing discrimination, racism.
Have we overcome all the racial problems from the 1930s? No, not at all. And if you look at the recent events, it's all too frustratingly similar to decades past.
There was a situation, I remember like it was yesterday. I asked for help from the police where it was like an emergency, and then I became the victim. I had 3 police officers grab me and just throw me down on the ground. And I had a bruise on my hand, bruise on my arms. I thought they were gonna kill me. I thought they were gonna shoot me. It was by 3 Caucasian officers. It was the worst experience.
Yeah, American cops definitely need work. But I don't know, this video is from like, a year ago, so hopefully the situation gets better with that anyway, but we'll see.
Of my life that I probably do not want to ever live again. I was so shooken because I grew up in a normal Russian Orthodox family. You know, we're not gangsters. You know, no one has a gun. We don't have any hoodies. I thought the police was there to help me. Why aren't they helping me? It's history that's repeated itself over and over and over again, and it hasn't been fixed. When my great-grandfather, George Tynes, experienced that discrimination during the Great Depression, Civil Rights Movement, it's the same thing, just in a different version.
Do not cooperate and accompany the arresting officer to the prison.
Well, I mean, and they're showing stuff from the Black Lives Matters movement and stuff that was kind of exacerbated from a few different things, but still, it definitely wasn't the best thing. So.
I've been living in Moscow for 1 year exactly. I teach English. I'm a teacher. I feel free in living in Russia because in Russia, no matter what time it is, I can walk outside and I'm safe. We're sitting outside the metro in this little benchy area. I remember the police officers, 2 police officers walking towards us, and my heart's beating fast, like boom, 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 boom. Oh, why? Because, living in America, you see police, you're traumatized. And I was like, well, talk, I'm scared. And then she's like, oh, my friend just moved here from America, and she's Russian. He's like, really? 5 minutes later, that same police officer comes back with the biggest bouquet of flowers.
And I feel like that's probably like how cops are just, around obviously not every country around the world, but, just around the world, really, where they don't take their job like, they're the freaking high school monitor or freaking high school hallway monitor or something, you know what I'm saying? They do their job, they go home, that's all,
A stranger and tells me, welcome to Russia, you belong here. I do belong here. It's a piece of me. And the more I'm here, the more I see that I'm not going anywhere. The Russians that I meet here, at first they're like, okay, you're a foreigner, but when I speak Russian, and then, wait, ты наша, ты русская.
Мой дедушка считал, что теннис – это символ достатка, символ успеха. Это то, что белые люди делают для своих состоятельных детишек. И он хотел, чтобы у него ребенок тоже сделал абсолютно все то же самое, что делали богатые белые.
And hopefully one day we can get past the whole skin color thing and just, like when we're talking about stuff like this, we can just be like, he wanted us to be like, live how rich people did instead of saying, like how white people did. And, just stuff like that. Hopefully we can get to a better, higher place as a society.
И как вы думаете, что я сделала, когда родилась моя дочка? Я ее с 5 или 6 лет отдала в теннис. Она также упиралась и кричала, я не хочу, не хочу. А я говорила, если дедушка сказал, значит будешь. Очень сложный вопрос, как бы сложилась судьба моих бабушки и дедушки, если бы они не остались в Советском Союзе, а остались бы в Нью-Йорке. Но я точно знаю, что если сейчас бабушка с дедушкой смотрят сверху, они очень гордятся, глядя на то, как мама прожила жизнь, то, как у меня сложилась судьба, и думаю, то, как сейчас живет моя дочка.
And I think that honestly for her, that was like the best turnout ever because not only was she able to come over and live a really great life over there in Russia, but she was able to be a part of their popular culture and be, somewhat famous. I don't know how famous she is, in the Russian culture, but obviously she's famous enough to be, remembered and stuff, so.
Мы дети цветного народа, в советской стране рождены. и счастливы тем, что отныне мы Родину нашу нашли. Мы Родину любим и ценим. Нигде нам не будет вольней. А если нас спросят, мы скажем. Иных нам нет друзей. Так пусть всему миру известно. Свободу мы здесь обрели. Мы дети цветного народа. Мы дети советской страны.
All right, guys, we'll go ahead and end it right there. So yeah, definitely very great video, very informative, and obviously covers something that not a lot of people really know. I'm sure not a lot of Russians even know about this stuff. So it is obviously really cool to be able to cover it and stuff and learn the little parts of history that doesn't really get a lot of coverage in history books and stuff like that. But without further ado, thank you again for joining me on another episode of Micah's Intellectual Corner. I'll see you guys on another one. I'm out. Peace.